Hello, and welcome to the Ultimate Strategy Podcast, your go-to podcast for everything strategy. Each week, we'll share a new episode covering a wide range of topics designed to help your business grow smarter and make strategy more approachable and actionable. I'm Devina, and I'm a Strategy Execution Director at Cascade.
And I'm Laura Blackmore, Head of Strategy Execution. Welcome. We're excited to have you with us today. This is just the beginning, so stay tuned for weekly episodes. Before we dive in, let me thank today's sponsor, Cascade. Cascade is the #1 strategy execution platform that helps turn visions into reality by working as the strategic brain of your organization. Thousands of businesses around the world use Cascade to plan, execute, and track their strategies in one place, improving efficiency and speeding up decision-making. By successfully executing strategies, Cascade customers are making a huge difference, from deploying life-saving vaccines to engineering the fastest Formula One car. If you want to get your team moving towards your vision in one central platform, check us out at our website, www.cascade.app. We'll leave the link in the episode notes. Now, let's get started. We have a very exciting topic today, Devina, don't we? I think we
always say that, but this one is really exciting.
They get more exciting every week.
Of course.
But I think today is all about blue sky thinking, which for a lot of people might actually be new. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course. So I guess blue sky thinking, what is it, right? I think it's a mindset, and I think it's actually more of an approach. And it's almost like a way of thinking, right? And what it really means is it's a methodology for brainstorming, but it's brainstorming without limits. There's no rules, there's no restrictions, and there's not this perspective or block in your mind around something that's not possible. You've got to dream big and you've got to envision incredible, bold ideas. And they should be a little bit free of the constraints of the reality that you might be facing, right? At least initially. That doesn't mean they aren't a boundary down later on, but it is the art of thinking as limitless as the sky above, which is great. And that's why I think it is one of our more exciting topics, Laura, because it's not bogged down in some of the realities of kind of running your strategy and executing.
I think it actually can be quite powerful. I think, when we talk about conventional strategies, they obviously normally evolve around budgets and resourcing and feasibility, and do we have the right tech? Do we have the right people? When can we get this done? And they obviously are super important and obviously critical to business success. But I think sometimes they actually box you in a little bit and box you into that sort of short-term progress rather than really breaking through and innovating. And I think I really like this concept around the blue sky thinking being a bit of a workout for your imagination. The more you flex those creative muscles, the better equipped you'll be to tackle challenge in unconventional ways. And I know we have a couple of case studies or businesses that have done this really, really well. Maybe we could start with when and why you use blue sky thinking and when you should really lean into it. What do you think? And then we can tell a few stories.
Of course. I think the first almost way, and I guess a great starter for 10 when you think about blue sky thinking, is thinking about your long-term vision. What are you working towards? And you're thinking in the 5 to 10 year horizon, where could you be without limits, right? And that's so far ahead that actually things can change drastically. I think about the Apple story when there was kind of more of the traditional computers that were really bulky and had a gajillion wires. Well, Steve Jobs in the 80s actually challenged his team, Apple, to create the Mac, what started out as the Macintosh. And he asked the team to not compromise. He wanted them to think about the product that customers would want rather than the product that could feasibly be built. And that's real blue sky thinking in action, and having this big vision and working towards it. And every great business today was once a vision and was once an idea that might have seemed impossible at the time, right? So I think long-term vision planning is a great place to start when you think about blue sky thinking.
What about if you're those who are listening, what the trigger could be? I think definitely when you're resetting that long-term vision, but I don't think we have to be constrained to a 5 or 10 year cycle to really do that blue sky thinking. So even, if you're about to launch a new product or a new service, maybe the market is demanding something fresh. And obviously the market at the moment is changing at lightning speed and everybody wants the latest new thing. You can't really afford to just copy what's already out there. And I think another really great story is obviously Tesla. Elon asked, what if cars didn't need gas and could be faster and cooler and smarter? And obviously, I actually saw one of my friends today doing the school drop-off in her Tesla, and it was like, God, they look so futuristic. It really was revolutionary a couple of years ago, but now, my neighbor has a Tesla. My other neighbor down the street has one. They're everywhere. The electric charging points are everywhere. But a couple of years ago, that felt very futuristic and very revolutionary. So I think I can imagine those conversations happening, like, how do we capture a new market? How do we launch a new product? How do we just do something different?
Yeah,
so I
really
think that
like
could be another way.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it also could be a point where you can reflect, and maybe things are stagnating slightly, right? Or maybe you've hit a bit of a roadblock. And if you feel that things have gone potentially a little bit stale, how do you break free from traditional methods, right? And maybe at the moment you're kind of doing your regular cycle planning, or you're having kind of planning for maybe a new project, new product or service, but maybe you're doing it a traditional way, right? Maybe it's about doing things differently, getting your team outside of, even physically outside of the office, or getting them into an inspiring place. And also, I think to get something different, you have to do something different, right? It's the definition of insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So I think especially when you hit roadblocks or stagnation, it's a great almost trigger point to really transform the way that you do something.
I like that. Well, let's get practical a little bit, because I'm running a blue sky thinking session later on for our team. And I think it's really interesting to think how to run one of these sessions when you haven't done it before. And especially, not everybody has a team. So it could be you're running it by yourself. So
of course,
I think if we walk through the steps of doing this practically, and hopefully listeners will get some inspiration of how to do it. I think the first step is obviously setting the scene. I think being in an inspiring environment, a room with natural light, a park, even a virtual space with creative tools, whatever that looks like for you, get out somewhere different and be be inspired. And then I think
I love that.
Setting the ground rules for your team, or even for yourself, that no idea is too big, too small, or too crazy. It's about thinking big. It's about anything is possible. What would you do next?
I love that. I think the main thing here, once you've set that scene, is start broad, right? Think big, ask super open-ended questions. What if money and resources were no object, right? You had all the people in the world, all the funds in the world. What would you do? What would the dream outcome look like? And then also, how would we approach this if we didn't have any competition? If the market was just us, how would we lead? How would we trailblaze? And I think when you start big, that's how you can then funnel down to see what really is potentially the right direction to follow. And I also think starting big means that you might also enable ideas or concepts that could come into fruition in the future as well. So maybe you park things for now in the broader picture, but it could come back around, right? And be reignited.
I like that. And I think that leads on to sort of how you map those ideas freely. So obviously using, if you're in person, those mind maps and whiteboards and sticky notes, but even in a virtual setting, you can still use those tools. They're just maybe, requires a bit more collaboration rather than one person doing them. But I think it's really important not to filter or evaluate or park anything while you're having the discussion. I think it's about getting the ideas out there, and then you can filter and evaluate if they're crazy later on or if they're way out of budget. So I think that idea of just thinking freely and no idea is a bad idea is definitely the mindset that I would I would have.
Also on that, Laura, I think it's interesting because this, almost taking this back to a bit of human psychology, as children, we actually are quite blue sky thinkers. Naturally, we're born as blue sky thinkers. But what happens is over time, maybe we take a bit of a risky jump down the stairs, we fall, we hurt ourselves. Then we start to restrict ourselves. And there's this video online that I've seen quite a few times. It's of they've got an ant on a piece of paper. They take a pen and they draw lines on this paper. The ant doesn't go past the line, even though it's not a real wall. It's just a line on a piece of paper, right? But because they come across something different, this black ink on the paper, it retreats and it thinks it's trapped, even though it's on a piece of paper, a flat piece of paper. But what happens eventually, the ant accidentally passes a line and then it realizes, whoa, this isn't real. This box that this person's trying to put me in is not real. And then it continues to go over the line. So it's interesting because I think human beings, we're a bit similar. Unfortunately, life takes us in that path where we do become a lot more in the box. So we actively have to try to be out of the box and then challenge ourselves, and mapping ideas freely, I think, starts to take us back to an age and an era when we weren't restricted, when everything was truly possible in our minds.
I like that. And I think that also leads on to sort of when you do start maybe getting into the step around challenging assumptions. I think, for example, I think if you're operating, let's say, very locally right now, how do you then say, well, imagine we go global? Like, what's going to happen? Can we go global? Should we go global? Like, you can really challenge that, boxed thinking, if you like. Exactly. And I think it's also a duty as team members to hold each other accountable for thinking bigger and challenging those assumptions and those restrictions that we put on ourselves. So, I think you can imagine just being in a room and just really helping each other think outside of the box, I think is actually really exciting and should be quite invigorating as well.
Super, super exciting. I also think we, as a team, start to form behaviors potentially too, right? The longer that you're together and the longer that you're working together or you're working on projects. So I'm almost stripping that back and, as you say, challenging those rules that you're unconsciously following and probably have been for some time is great. But what's important there, I think, Laura, is then transitioning it to actionable ideas. So once you have this great big sea and plethora of ideas and concept, you've got to start almost doing a bit of a thematic analysis, consider almost clustering them into themes or categories, and then you pick a few that you need to further explore, because the reality is also there is a certain amount of budget. People only have a certain amount of time. So almost start big and then start to funnel as you go.
I like that. And I think even, if just thinking about the team that you might have, if you've been a team for quite a while, consider bringing in an outsider, somebody from a completely different department, maybe somebody external, somebody who can bring that fresh perspective, I think can actually bring a lot of unexpected insights as well.
I like that. A good time to also do this is when you make a new hire, because they are truly fresh and they can come in with that like almost fresh perspective and lens as well on what your team is doing and their experience from their prior roles.
I love that. But let's talk about pitfalls and how to avoid them.
Cool.
I think obviously blue sky thinking is incredible. Why aren't we all doing more of it? But it's not without its challenges. What are the 3 pitfalls to watch out for, do you think?
This is a great question, because I think with any methodology, you've got to watch out for some of the potential spirals that you could get into. And I think one thing for blue sky thinking that you need to be mindful of is you do need to prioritize, right? Too many ideas means that you don't have enough focus. And that's never a good thing. And that's also the principle in strategy, right? Less is more. So you can use tools or frameworks like the Eisenhower matrix, right? Or even simple voting, right? To really choose the most promising ideas as well, because we can't do it all, at least not in this moment, right? But build out a bit of a roadmap. Maybe there's something, as I said, that you could pick up in the future. But I know there's more, Laura. So what do you think is another pitfall?
I think the first one, and this is definitely something that I'm always thinking about, is that lack of realism. That blue sky thinking is only step 1, but step 2 is actually grounding your ideas. So, you at some stage, and ideally quite quickly, when, you don't want just these ideas to live on a whiteboard to be forgotten about, but I think you've got to move into that phase of what is it going to take to make this possible? And, what is the right moment for us? Is it when we get the right budget? Is it when we get the right people? Is it when we have hit certain growth levers? I think you've really got to start asking those questions of how are we ultimately going to deliver there. So I think moving from ideation to reality, it needs to happen quite quickly.
I agree. I like that. And I guess maybe even this point of reality, another pitfall that you might see is some resistance, right? Thinking in this way is definitely quite different to traditional mechanisms. As I said, the way that human beings, we develop as we go along. So some people might struggle with this big picture thinking. So starting with smaller, more approachable exercises, like reimagining potentially some of your BAU and daily tasks, that could help to almost train that muscle, work out that muscle, as Laura said. But I don't think anyone should be deterred by the pitfalls, right? I think, it's definitely something that you can watch out for and consider for, but the benefits far outweigh some of these potential issues.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think just ending there on sort of a brand that we all know and love, or I certainly love, is Lego. They could quite easily have become stagnated and, maybe even, I wouldn't have said so far as saying they would have gone away, because I think people always have that sort of soft spot for Lego, but they definitely faced declining sales in the early 2000s. And I know that they used blue sky thinking to redefine play, introducing robotics and coding kits. And I know I've definitely seen those on the shelves recently. That was, it was very aspirational, I would say, for the early 2000s, but also quite realistic still as well. And, obviously we're now 2 decades later, these things are on the shelf. So I think they got prioritization right and they got the focus right, and they could ultimately achieve that blue sky thinking.
I love that. Maybe another example in the toy space is Mattel's Barbie. So they actually faced declining sales too after kind of the doll era. And then, as you will have seen in recent years, they went big on licensing and the movies and collaborations and all of these things, which, probably maybe 10, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have imagined doing, right? The focus was on the dolls and the SKUs. So actually changing approaches is definitely not a bad thing and can reignite your business.
I love that. Well, closing thoughts then. I think blue sky thinking we've definitely talked about is about giving yourself permission to dream, explore, innovate. And it's definitely not just for the visionaries or even the C-suite executives. It's for anyone looking to create a meaningful impact. So I know we're doing a blue sky session this week.
Yes.
I would encourage anybody else to do blue sky thinking, even if it's just a short session, and pick a problem. Ask what, if anything, was possible, and see where your imagination takes you for the upcoming new year. And hopefully you'll bring in lots of innovative ideas that will inspire your team. And do let us know how you get on. Leave us some comments. We'd love to hear from businesses around the world and how you're getting on with that blue sky thinking and innovative strategies you're putting in place. But that wraps up today's episode on blue sky thinking. Hopefully you found it insightful and it helps you on your journey to better strategy execution. Thank you, Devina.
Thank you. And make sure to tune in next week where we'll be talking about another exciting topic. It's going to be another great episode filled with a bunch of practical tips too that you don't want to miss.
And in the meantime, don't forget to hit subscribe on the Ultimate Strategy Podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. Also, check out the links to our website, as we mentioned, which will be in the description. And a big thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Cascade, for making this podcast possible.
Of course. And maybe another point too is that as we come to the end of the year, if there's any episodes or any topics that you'd love to hear about for 2025, please let us know. We would love to get feedback and really shape what next year looks like for us as we dream big as a team. So thanks for listening, and remember that great strategies are only as good as their execution.
So take action, make it happen, and see the results. See you in the next episode for your weekly dose of strategy.